I, 28F, was kicked out of my parents' house 5 years ago when I was 23. The reason? My sister, 32F, got pregnant and they wanted to make room for her boyfriend to move in. At the time, I was an aspiring writer, but still unpublished and struggling to make ends meet. It all started when my sister announced her pregnancy. She was about 5 months along and decided she wanted her boyfriend to move in with her. Our house wasn't particularly large, so my parents came to the conclusion that I had to go. They sat me down one evening and dropped the bomb. "Sweetie," my mom began, her voice sickeningly sweet, "you're an adult now. It's time for you to spread your wings and leave the nest." I was shocked. What? But I'm not ready. I'm still trying to get my writing career off the ground. My dad chimed in, "That's exactly why you need to go out on your own. It'll give you life experience for your writing." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "So, you're kicking me out? Just like that?" They exchanged glances before my mom continued, "We prefer to think of it as giving you a push. Your sister needs support right now, and we need to make space for her boyfriend. Can't they get their own place?" I asked, desperately. "They're not financially stable enough," my dad replied. "It's better for the baby if they're here with us." I was furious. And what about me? Where am I supposed to go? They suggested I could stay with friends or maybe my grandparents. It was clear they had made up their minds, and there was no room for negotiation. I packed my things, feeling betrayed and abandoned. As I was leaving, my sister had the audacity to thank me for understanding. With nowhere else to go, I crashed on a friend's couch. The next few months were a blur of job hunting, writing whenever I could, and trying to make sense of what had happened. I felt lost, angry, and completely alone. Then, something unexpected happened. The day after I left, I received a letter from my sister. I thought maybe she was apologizing or offering some kind of explanation. Boy, was I wrong. The contents of that letter changed everything. In the letter, my sister wrote, "I know you're probably upset about having to move out, but I wanted to explain why it was necessary. My boyfriend has a bit of a wandering eye, and I didn't feel comfortable having another young woman in the house. I've worked so hard to get him to commit to me and the baby, and I can't risk anything jeopardizing that. I hope you understand. Family has to come first, right?" I was stunned. My sister had manipulated our parents into kicking me out because she was insecure about her relationship. She was willing to sacrifice my well-being for a guy she couldn't even trust. It was at that moment that I realized how toxic my family dynamic truly was. From that day forward, I cut off all contact with my family. I blocked their numbers, unfriended them on social media, and threw myself into my writing. It wasn't easy. There were nights I cried myself to sleep, wondering if I was doing the right thing. But every time I thought about reaching out, I remembered that letter and steeled my resolve. The first year on my own was brutal. I bounced from one friend's couch to another, never wanting to overstay my welcome. I worked a series of dead-end jobs, waiting tables, stocking shelves, anything to keep a roof over my head and food in my stomach. All the while, I wrote furiously, pouring my pain and anger into my stories. I'd wake up at 5 a.m., write for 2 hours before my shift, then come home and write until I couldn't keep my eyes open. Weekends were spent in libraries or cheap cafes, nursing a single coffee for hours while I typed away on my laptop. I sent out query after query to agents and publishers, only to face a barrage of rejections. There were moments of despair when I considered giving up. I'd stare at my dwindling bank account and wonder if I was fooling myself. Maybe my parents were right. Maybe I wasn't cut out for this. But then I'd remember why I was doing this, not just to prove them wrong, but to prove to myself that I could make it on my own. The emotional toll was heavy. Holidays were the worst. I'd see families shopping together or hear Christmas carols and feel a pang of loneliness so sharp it took my breath away. I started avoiding social media altogether, tired of seeing happy family photos and wondering if my parents even missed me. I battled depression and anxiety, often feeling like I was drowning in self-doubt. There were days when getting out of bed felt like an insurmountable task. But I pushed through, reminding myself that every word I wrote was a step away from the life I'd left behind and towards the future I was fighting for. Slowly but surely, things started to change. My writing improved with each draft, each rejection teaching me something new. I joined writing groups, attended workshops, and networked with other aspiring authors. It was at one of these workshops that I met my agent, a sharp-witted woman who saw potential in my work. With her guidance, I refined my novel. We spent months editing, rewriting, and polishing until it shone. When she called to tell me we had an offer from a publisher, I broke down in tears. It wasn't a huge advance, but it was validation. Proof that I hadn't been chasing a pipe dream all this time. My first novel was released with little fanfare, but it found its audience. The reviews were positive, and sales were steady. I was able to quit my day job and focus on writing full-time. It was surreal. I'd dreamed of this moment for so long, and now it was here. But success brought its own challenges. As I began work on my second novel, I felt the pressure mounting. What if the first book was a fluke? What if I couldn't replicate that success? The imposter syndrome was real, and there were days when I'd stare at the blank page, paralyzed by fear. It was during this time that I really felt the absence of my family. I had no one to call and share my fears with, no one to reassure me that everything would be okay. I'd achieved my dream, but there was an emptiness that success couldn't fill. I threw myself into my second book, channeling all my complex emotions into my writing. Maybe it was that raw honesty that resonated with readers, because when the book was released, it exploded. Suddenly, I found myself on bestseller lists. Interviews, book signings, even talk of movie rights. It was surreal. As my success grew, so did the hole in my heart. I'd see other authors at events with their proud parents, spouses, or siblings cheering them on. And while I had built a network of supportive friends and colleagues, it wasn't the same. There was always a part of me that wondered what my family would think if they could see me now. I tried to fill the void with work, with travel, with fleeting relationships. But no matter where I went or what I achieved, there was always that nagging feeling of something missing. I'd catch myself reaching for the phone to call my mom after a big success, only to remember that I couldn't. Despite all this, I never regretted my decision to cut ties. The pain of what they'd done, especially my sister's betrayal, was still raw. I'd built this life for myself, without their support or belief in me. And yet, there was a small part of me that hoped they'd reach out, that they'd realize their mistake and try to make amends. Be careful what you wish for, I guess. Last week, out of the blue, my parents showed up at my door. They had somehow found out where I lived, I suspect through a mutual acquaintance, and wanted to make things right. I was stunned to see them standing there, looking older and somewhat desperate. My mom spoke first. "Honey, we've missed you so much. We want to apologize for what happened and try to rebuild our relationship." My dad nodded, adding, "We're so proud of your success. We always knew you had it in you." Their words felt hollow. Where was this support when I needed it most? I asked them point blank why they were really there. They exchanged glances before my mom admitted, "Well, we could use some help. Your father and I have retired, and your sister, she's struggling. Her boyfriend left her 2 years ago, and she's having a hard time making ends meet with the flower shop she started." I couldn't believe it. After 5 years of no contact, they show up asking for money? I felt a mixture of anger and pity. "So, you're here because you need something from me," I said flatly. They tried to backpedal, insisting that they genuinely wanted to reconnect, but it was clear their motives weren't pure. I told them I needed time to think and closed the door, my mind reeling. Now, I'm torn. Part of me wants to tell them to get lost. They made their choice 5 years ago when they kicked me out. Why should I help them now? But another part of me feels guilty. They're still my family, after all. Am I being too harsh? I've worked hard for my success, and I don't feel like I owe them anything. But I can't help wondering if cutting them off completely is the right thing to do. They made a terrible decision, but do they deserve to be shut out forever? So, Reddit, AITA for wanting to cut my family off completely, even now that they're struggling and reaching out? Should I give them another chance, or stick to my guns and keep them out of my life for good? Update 1. It's been a week since my parents showed up at my door, and I've finally made a decision. But before I get to that, let me fill you in on what's happened since my last post. First off, thank you all for your comments and advice. It's been overwhelming to read through everything, but I appreciate the support and different perspectives you've shared. It's given me a lot to think about. After taking a few days to process my parents' sudden appearance, I decided to hear them out. I know many of you advised against it, but I felt I needed closure, one way or another. So, I arranged to meet them at a neutral location, a quiet cafe near my apartment. When I arrived, they were already there, looking nervous and out of place. My mom tried to hug me, but I stepped back, keeping my distance. We sat down, and for a moment, nobody spoke. The silence was deafening. Finally, my dad cleared his throat. We know we made a terrible mistake 5 years ago. We let your sister manipulate us, and we failed you as parents. My mom nodded, tears in her eyes. We've regretted it every day since. We tried to reach out so many times, but I blocked you, I finished for her. Because you kicked me out without a second thought. Because you chose her over me. They both flinched at my words. Good. I wanted them to feel the pain they'd caused me. We know, my dad said softly. And we don't expect you to forgive us. We wanted you to know how sorry we are. And how proud we are of what you've accomplished. I laughed bitterly. Proud? You weren't there. You didn't support me. You don't get to be proud. They exchanged glances, and I could see the pain in their eyes. Part of me felt satisfied seeing them squirm, but another part felt empty. This wasn't as cathartic as I'd imagined. Tell me about my sister, I said, changing the subject. You said she's struggling? My mom nodded, looking relieved to be on safer ground. Her boyfriend left her 2 years ago, just after your nephew turned 3. She tried to keep the flower shop going, but business has been slow. She's thinking of filing for bankruptcy. I absorbed this information, trying to sort through my feelings. On one hand, I felt a twinge of sympathy for my sister and her child. On the other, I couldn't help but think this was karma for what she'd done. And let me guess, I said, my voice cold, you want me to bail her out? My parents looked uncomfortable. We're not asking for money, my dad said quickly. We thought maybe you could talk to her. Give her some advice on running a business. You've been so successful. I cut him off. Successful because I had no choice. Because you left me with nothing. The silence that followed was heavy. I could see the guilt on their faces, but it didn't make me feel any better. I realized then that I didn't want their apologies or their pride. I don't know what I wanted. Look, I said finally, I appreciate that you came here to apologize. But I can't just forgive and forget. You have no idea what I went through these past 5 years. The struggles, the loneliness, the self-doubt. I built my life from nothing, and I did it without you. My mom was openly crying now, and my dad looked like he'd aged 10 years in the span of our conversation. We understand, he said quietly. We just hoped maybe we could start to make amends. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I was about to say. I'm not ready for that. Maybe I never will be. I've made a life for myself, and I'm not sure I want to risk letting you back in. They nodded, looking defeated but not surprised. Can we at least keep in touch? My mom asked hesitantly. I considered it for a moment. I'll think about it. But for now, I need you to respect my space. Don't show up at my home again. If I decide to contact you, it'll be on my terms. As we stood to leave, my dad asked one last question. What about your sister? Will you talk to her? I paused, my hand on the door. No, I said finally. Her choices led to this. She needs to figure it out on her own, just like I did. With that, I walked out, leaving my parents behind once again. But this time, it was my choice. So, that's where things stand now. I've made my decision to maintain my distance from my family. It wasn't easy, and part of me still wonders if I'm doing the right thing. But I know I need to protect the life I've built for myself. I'm not closing the door completely. I've agreed to let my parents email me occasionally. But I've made it clear that I'm not ready for a relationship, and I'm definitely not getting involved in my sister's problems. Am I still the asshole? Maybe. But for now, this is what I need to do for my own peace of mind. I'll update if anything changes, but don't hold your breath. Update 2. It's been about a month since my last update, and I wish I could say things have improved. Unfortunately, the situation with my family has only gotten more complicated. I'm still trying to process everything that's happened, but I'll do my best to explain. As I mentioned in my last post, I had agreed to let my parents email me occasionally. At first, things seemed okay. They sent a couple of brief messages, mostly just checking in and sharing minor updates about their lives. I responded politely but kept my distance emotionally. Then, about 2 weeks ago, I received a phone call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered it. It was my father, and he sounded distressed. "I know you said to email," he began, his voice shaky, "but this couldn't wait. We've made a decision, and we wanted you to hear it from us first." Alarm bells were already ringing in my head, but I let him continue. "Your mother and I have decided to cut ties with your sister," he said. "We've realized how much damage she's caused to our family, and we can't support her behavior anymore." I was stunned. This was the last thing I expected to hear. "What brought this on?" I asked, suspicion creeping into my voice. My father hesitated before responding. "Well, we've been thinking a lot about what happened 5 years ago. And after our conversation with you last month, we realized how unfairly we treated you. We want to make things right. Something about this didn't sit right with me. It seemed too sudden, too convenient. And what exactly does making things right entail?" I pressed. There was a long pause before he answered. "We were hoping, well, now that we've cut ties with your sister, maybe you'd be willing to let us back into your life. We miss you, and we want to be there for you now." And there it was. The real reason for this sudden change of heart. "Let me get this straight," I said, my voice cold. "You're cutting off my sister, who you've been supporting for years, in the hopes that I'll welcome you back with open arms?" "It's not like that," my father protested weakly. "We genuinely believe it's the right thing to do. Your sister has been taking advantage of us, and dash." I cut him off. "And what? You thought you'd trade one daughter for the other? That's not how this works, Dad." I could hear the desperation in his voice as he tried to explain. "We're retired now, and your sister's financial demands were becoming too much. We thought, well, with your success." The pieces fell into place, and I felt a wave of disgust wash over me. "You thought I'd support you financially if you cut her off, is that it?" His silence was all the confirmation I needed. "I can't believe this," I said, my voice shaking with anger. "You're not cutting her off because you realize how badly you've treated me. You're doing it because you think I'm a better financial prospect. This is exactly why I don't want you in my life." "That's not true," my father insisted. "We do want to make amends. The financial aspect is just a consideration." I laughed bitterly. "A consideration? Do you have any idea how manipulative and selfish you sound right now? You haven't changed at all." Before he could respond, I heard my mother's voice in the background, asking what was going on. I couldn't bear to hear any more. "Don't contact me again," I said firmly. "Any of you. I'm done." I hung up and immediately blocked the number. Then, for good measure, I blocked their email addresses too. I thought I had put all of this behind me, but clearly, my family had other ideas. The next day, I received a barrage of messages from my sister and several family friends. Apparently, my parents had gone through with their plan to cut my sister off, and now she was frantically reaching out to anyone who would listen. Her messages ranged from confused to angry to pleading. She couldn't understand why our parents had suddenly turned on her. In her mind, they had always chosen her, always supported her. She couldn't fathom why they would abandon her now. I didn't respond to any of the messages, but I couldn't help but feel a twisted sense of satisfaction. My sister was finally experiencing what I had gone through 5 years ago. The betrayal, the confusion, the sudden loss of support. Part of me wanted to tell her exactly why this was happening, to let her know that her actions had finally caught up with her. But I resisted the urge. I had worked too hard to build my new life, to find peace away from my toxic family. Engaging with any of them now would only drag me back into their drama. So here I am, caught in the middle of a family meltdown that I want no part of. My parents, in their misguided attempt to win me back, have created an even bigger mess. My sister is collateral damage in their selfish plan. And I'm left feeling angry, exhausted, and more certain than ever that I made the right choice in cutting them out of my life. I know some of you might think I'm being cold-hearted. Maybe I am. But after everything that's happened, I can't bring myself to care about their problems anymore. They made their choices, and now they have to live with the consequences just like I did. For now, I'm focusing on my writing and the family I've chosen, my friends who have stood by me through everything. I'm working on my third novel, and I'm determined not to let this family drama derail my life again. If anything else happens, I'll post another update. But honestly, I hope I won't have to. Update 3. It's been a whirlwind week since my last update, and the situation with my family has escalated beyond anything I could have imagined. I'm still trying to process everything, but I'll do my best to explain what's happened. First, I want to thank everyone for their support and advice. Your comments have been a lifeline during this crazy time. Now, let me dive into the latest developments. 3 days ago, I received an email from my sister. I was tempted to delete it without reading, but curiosity got the better of me. I wish I could say it was a heartfelt apology or an attempt at reconciliation. Instead, it was, well, see for yourself. Dear sister, I hope this email finds you well. I've heard about your success as an author, and I must say, I'm not surprised. You always were the clever one in the family. I'm reaching out because I believe it's time we put the past behind us. I know you might still be upset about what happened years ago, but I want you to know that I'm willing to forgive you for abandoning the family. We all make mistakes, and I understand that you were young and selfish back then. But family is family, right? I'm sure you've heard that Mom and Dad have made some poor decisions lately. They're not thinking clearly, and I'm worried about them. As the responsible members of this family, I think it's up to us to step in and help. I've started a small business, a charming little flower shop, and I could use some investment to help it grow. With your success, I'm sure you could spare some funds to help your sister out. After all, that's what family does. Let me know when you're ready to be a part of this family again. We're all waiting with open arms. Love. Your sister. I was speechless. The sheer audacity and lack of self-awareness in this email left me stunned. It was clear that my sister had no idea about the real reasons behind our parents' actions, nor did she seem to remember her own role in my departure from the family. In a moment of anger, and perhaps against my better judgment, I decided to reply. I attached screenshots of the conversation I had with our parents, where they admitted to cutting her off in hopes of getting financial support from me. I didn't add any commentary, I felt the evidence spoke for itself. What happened next was like watching a train wreck in slow motion. Within hours of my reply, my sister's Facebook page exploded with a long, emotional post detailing how she had been betrayed by our parents and manipulated by me. She shared edited versions of my screenshots, twisting the narrative to make herself look like the victim. Our parents, not to be outdone, posted their own version of events. They painted themselves as long-suffering parents who had finally seen the light and were trying to make amends with their successful and forgiving daughter, me, only to be cruelly rejected. Before I knew it, extended family members, old friends, and even some of my professional contacts were being drawn into this mess. My social media notifications were blowing up with people taking sides, offering unsolicited advice, or simply expressing shock at the public airing of our family's dirty laundry. I watched in horror as this family drama unfolded publicly, with each post and comment adding fuel to the fire. My sister was accusing our parents of abandonment, our parents were calling her ungrateful, and both were alternating between painting me as a villain and a potential savior. The worst part? Some of my distant relatives and old acquaintances started reaching out to me directly, either asking for my side of the story or, in some cases, asking if I could lend them money too, since I was obviously wealthy now. I felt like I was watching a reality TV show, except it was my life, and there was no option to change the channel. After a day of this madness, I decided I needed to take action to protect myself and my reputation. I made all my social media accounts private and posted a brief, professional statement. I am aware of the personal family matters being discussed on social media. I respectfully ask for privacy during this time and will not be commenting further on these personal issues. Thank you for your understanding. I then emailed my agent and publicist to give them a heads up, in case this mess started affecting my professional life. They were understanding and supportive, assuring me they would handle any inquiries. As for my family, I sent one final email to my sister and parents. Your actions have shown me, once and for all, that you have no respect for my privacy or my feelings. This public display is shameful and manipulative. I want no part of it. Do not contact me again, through any means. Any further attempts at communication will be considered harassment and dealt with accordingly. I then blocked their email addresses, phone numbers, and all social media accounts. I even went as far as to set up filters in my email to automatically delete any messages containing their names or email addresses. It's been 2 days since I sent that email, and the social media storm seems to be dying down. My family members are still posting occasionally, but without my engagement, interest seems to be waning. I'm left feeling. I don't even know how to describe it. Angry, certainly. Hurt, despite my best efforts not to be. But mostly, I feel an overwhelming sense of relief. Seeing this ugly display has confirmed what I've known deep down for years: cutting ties with my family was the right decision. I'm more certain than ever that I don't want these people in my life. Their actions have shown that they haven't changed, that they still see me as nothing more than a potential source of money and status. So, what now? I'm focusing on my writing, throwing myself into my next novel. I'm also considering therapy to help process all of this. And I'm holding my chosen family, my true friends who have supported me through this mess, closer than ever. I'm not sure what the future holds, but I know I'm done with this drama. My focus now is on my writing and the people who actually care about me. If there's one thing I've learned from all this, it's that I made the right choice 5 years ago. Update 4. Well, Reddit, it's been a hell of a week since my last update. I really thought things couldn't get any worse, but I should have known better. Grab your popcorn, because this family drama has reached soap opera levels of ridiculousness. First off, the social media war I mentioned in my last post? It's escalated. Big time. What started as a few angry posts has turned into a full-blown family feud, all playing out for the world to see. And somehow, I'm still at the center of it, despite not engaging at all. My sister, apparently not satisfied with her initial Facebook rant, has gone on a posting spree. She's sharing throwback photos of our family, captioning them with passive-aggressive comments about how things used to be before money and success tore us apart. She's conveniently forgotten that she was the one who manipulated our parents into kicking me out in the first place. One post particularly got to me. It was a picture from my high school graduation, with the caption, "Remember when we were a happy family?" Before some of us let fame go to their heads and forgot where they came from. #FamilyFirst #money changed her. The irony of her using #FamilyFirst is not lost on me. Not to be outdone, our parents have taken to their own social media accounts to defend themselves. They're painting themselves as victims, claiming they've been manipulated by both of their daughters. They've even gone as far as to share personal details about my sister's failed relationship and business struggles, all in an attempt to gain sympathy. One of their posts read, "We've always tried to do what's best for our girls. We supported sister's name through her pregnancy, her boyfriend leaving, and her business failures. We reached out to my name to reconnect, only to be cruelly rejected. Where did we go wrong? #heartbroken parents." It's like watching a train wreck in slow motion. I can't look away, even though I desperately want to. But here's where it gets even crazier. Remember how I mentioned that some distant relatives had reached out asking for money? Well, apparently, word has spread through the family grapevine that I'm some sort of millionaire author. I'm not, by the way. Successful, yes, but not rolling in money like they seem to think. Now, I'm getting messages from second cousins I haven't spoken to in years, great-aunts I barely remember, and even old neighbors from when I was a kid. All of them seem to have some sort of financial crisis that only I can solve. It's like they think I'm running a charity for long-lost acquaintances. One message from a cousin I haven't seen since we were kids read, "Hey. Long time no see. So great to hear about your success. Listen, I'm in a bit of a tight spot. My car broke down and I can't get to work. I was wondering if you could spare $5,000? I'd pay you back, of course. That's probably nothing to you now, right? Thanks in advance. I wish I was making this up. The cherry on top of this disaster sundae? My sister's latest post. She's announced that she's writing a book, a tell-all memoir about growing up in our family and how success and greed can corrupt even the closest sibling bond. She's even hinted at shopping for a publisher. I'll admit, this one got to me. The idea of my sister profiting off a twisted version of our family history, potentially damaging my professional reputation in the process, makes my blood boil. For a moment, I considered breaking my silence to set the record straight. But then I took a deep breath and really thought about it. This is exactly what they want. They're trying to provoke a reaction, to draw me back into their drama. And I refuse to give them the satisfaction. So, I've made my decision. I'm not just cutting ties with my immediate family, I'm going scorched earth. I've blocked every single family member, distant relative, and old acquaintance who's tried to contact me about this mess. I've hired a lawyer to draft cease and desist letters to my parents and sister, warning them about publishing any false or defamatory information about me. I've also spoken to my agent and publisher, giving them a heads up about the situation. They've been incredibly supportive and are prepared to defend against any potential fallout from my sister's book if it ever materializes. As for my own social media, I've gone completely private. No more public posts, no more leaving myself open to this circus. My author page will be strictly professional from now on, managed by my publisher's PR team. I know this might seem extreme to some of you. You might think I'm overreacting, that family is family and I should try to work things out. But here's the thing, this isn't family. This is toxicity, manipulation, and greed, all wrapped up in a package labeled family to make it seem acceptable. Real family doesn't treat each other this way. Real family doesn't try to exploit and manipulate each other for personal gain. I may not have blood relatives in my life anymore, but I have friends who have stood by me through all of this. They've offered support, advice, and a shoulder to cry on without asking for a single thing in return. That's family. So, what's next for me? I'm throwing myself into my writing. All of this drama has actually given me inspiration for my next book, a novel about chosen family and the strength it takes to break toxic cycles. Who knows, maybe something good will come out of this mess after all. To those of you who've followed my story from the beginning, thanks for sticking around. Your advice and support have been a bright spot in this whole ordeal. But this is going to be my last update. It's time for me to close this chapter of my life and move on to better things. Wish me luck, Reddit. I think I'm finally free.